Hello, everybody, and we are now live here on Sunday night, 7:30 p.m. Central Time. The date is August 20th, 2023, and it's still ridiculously hot here in Texas. I see my sister has joined the live chat, and I go, "You're going to be in Greenland tomorrow." I'm definitely jealous because it's so hot here that it's almost like punishment. We're being punished for something. But I've seen some people pop up. Of course, the notification goes out, so I want people to get time to get that, so they're watching and listening to the show from the beginning, because we're talking about very important stuff here. In my opinion, it's the most important show I've ever put on YouTube. So people, please, there's victims involved here with what we're going to be talking about. So always keep it respectful in the chat. And I know you guys always do, but there could be someone new that isn't part of the regular Sunday night group, because we're going to have some new people coming in. I saw an old friend of mine, Shane Meyer, pop up. It's good to hear from Shane, back from Oak Ridge back in the day. So it's great seeing Shane pop up in the live. And I know there's some others watching. Patty, thanks for coming on and moderating. And Military, good seeing you. So yeah, there's going to be some questions for sure later on for our guests, and definitely don't ask any questions about anything else related that I do. Nothing's Zodiac or Cooper or Yuba County Fives. It's all about what we're talking about tonight, and that's going to be Wilkerson Intermediate School. And if you saw my other video I put up a few days ago, you'll have a little bit of background on it, but I'll assume some people might not have any background on what we're going to talk about tonight. But we're talking about an intermediate school. That's 2 grades. That's fifth and sixth grade. I know that some intermediate schools don't even exist anymore. It might have gotten absorbed either into junior high or some another way. But back in the day, it was 2 grades, fifth and sixth. Anybody feel free to correct me if I'm getting wrong, because we're looking back many years now. But Wilkerson was in the Woodlands, Texas, and this is when the Woodlands, Texas was still brand new. It was nothing but a bunch of trees, literally a bunch of trees in Montgomery County, Texas. And a guy named George Mitchell, he was a Greek immigrant that came over with his family when he was a young boy. He got into the oil business, and he bought a massive bunch of acres of trees in the Woodlands. And that's why it's called the Woodlands, because it was nothing but trees. But George Mitchell, when he originally bought it, I think in the mid-60s, he was going to just pretty much harvest the trees for money. And he never had an idea at that point that he was going to develop this into what's called a master plan community, where it was going to be like the sustainable way of living for your family and all this kind of stuff. So it's kind of ironic what happened in this situation. But Wilkerson Intermediate is one of the first, was one of the first schools built in the Woodlands, Texas, along with Knox Junior High, which is just down Sawmill Road. And, that's just kind of setting this up. And the year we're going to be in is 1975, and we're going up to the early 1980s when all this transpired. But as my guest coming on, his name is Mark Barbre, and he went to Wilkerson. I did not. My sisters went to Wilkerson Intermediate School. One of them's in the live chat now. You see Jennifer Dickinson is my sister. She went to Wilkerson, and she remembers what went on there. As I said, my guest, Mark Barbre, did. I did not know Mark growing up. He's a few grades higher than me, like my sister. So a lot of people knew other people there, but it's not such a small community where everybody knew everybody. So I just want to get that straight. So now I'm going to go ahead and bring on our guest. It's Mark Barbre, and we're going to talk about what happened at Wilkerson Intermediate so many years ago. Hey, Mark, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing good.
Good. Thanks for coming on.
I wish it would cool down outside.
Oh yeah, I know you're not too far from me. I'm in Katy, Texas, and I know you're still up in the area where this all happened in Montgomery County in the Woodlands area.
I still am.
But it's just as hot up there as it is down here. And this has been a long time coming, because I know we kind of briefly exchanged messages a few years ago, and then I know I talked to Chuck Foreman a little bit. I actually talked to Chuck again today. I let you know, and kind of got caught up on how much Chuck found out about what happened at Wilkerson. And how did you get involved in this? Because I of course know, and we talked a lot yesterday. But what? And I know we were talking about, you were actually at a funeral when you talked about this through the years with other people you knew, but it was actually you attended a funeral, and that's when people really, like you personally, started really thinking something had happened at Wilkerson Intermediate School that made a bunch of people
I always had my suspicions about the school that something odd went on, and I felt like it was covered up. But as we grew up, I just put that to the back of my mind and really forgot all about it. And a guy from school that he was one of the first people I knew by name when I moved here in 1972 in the second grade, and it was Danny Philpot. And so I just felt somehow obligated I wanted to go to his funeral. So I did. And there were several other people from elementary that we go way back. We were all friends way back then because there wasn't a whole lot of people here back then. And we got to talking after the funeral, and some people, were like, man, he's awful young to be dying of cancer. He got diagnosed, I think, when he was around 38 with brain cancer. And then I think it gave him 9 more years. So I may be off on my math, but I think he died when he was 47. And it was there that we got to talking, and some people were like, I think somehow it's connected to Wilkerson because I've been sick ever since I started going there, this particular person was saying. And that I was, I always was curious what it was. And they said they had heard it was phenol. And I was really, and started talking about the group you had talked about that Chuck Foreman had started. And so that really kind of kicked off right there. I was always curious, so it didn't take much to get me to start looking into it. So I joined the group, and that's where I got a lot of this information, and everything that I have pretty much came from being part of that group. A lot of people in the group shared. I think that's where I got some of the news articles. But all these documents I got from Kimberly Sutton, which was a reporter for the Conroe Courier.
Right. And that's good. That was the first article on it.
Yeah, the article that she had done on that.
Yeah, Chuck was involved. Yeah, I mean, that's amazing. So it really, the genesis of it for you, I mean, you had heard of some things going on before, was that going to a funeral for Danny Philpot that you didn't really know that well. You just knew he was from the neighborhood, so to speak, and you're paying. Yeah,
I didn't really know him that well personally. We had just been to school so many years, he knew who I was.
Yeah. And you brought that up on the phone call that we had yesterday, and you just out of the blue said Danny Philpot, and I was like, that really Danny Philpot? And I was like, I had no idea what became of him, because I knew him when I was young. I was 12 or 13 years old. I wanted to play guitar like every other young guy. I wanted to be a rock and roller, we were into heavy metal music. And there's this dude named Danny Philpot that gave guitar lessons, and this guy was
really good.
He was really amazing, phenomenal guitar player. I remember going to his house to take these lessons, and I had let my little guitar on my back, and I'd ride my bike a long way. He lived pretty far. He lived near another friend of mine. But it was a good haul on my bike. I lived in Oak Ridge North, but Danny lived a little closer to Rayford Road, I believe. He lived back in the day. He lived closer to Rayford, and I went over there for my little lesson. And this guy was like, I think he was 3 or 4 years older than me, something like that. But he was playing his guitar, and he was already
he was in my grade. I graduated.
He was in your grade, okay?
Yeah.
So Danny was already multi-tracking. At 16 years old, he was already laying down drum tracks and vocals and drums and mixing it all. At 16 years old, we didn't know anyone around in the neighborhood doing that stuff. I mean, he was advanced.
Yeah, he loved music.
Yeah, he was ahead of his time. That's why I would always think about what's going on with this guy. I remember him. He goes, "I just wrote a new song. It's called Rock and Roll Nerd." And he played it for me. He had this pink guitar, and talked about being a rock and roll nerd with a pink guitar. It was like this Gibson Explorer for you guitar people out there. But I remember thinking this guy is just really talented. And then I felt guilty when you told me all that, because about him getting sick. I didn't pay him for that last guitar lesson. And I mean, it haunted me. I'm serious. I stiffed him $15 or something. And I ran into him a few months later. It's like, dude, you owe me $15. I felt like so bad about it, because this guy was he was so talented. I'm going to put up a picture right now. This is Danny Philpot, who changed his name to Danny Blitz. And I don't know if that's legal, but he went by Danny Blitz, and
it was legal. He did it legally.
It was legal. He did it legally. Okay. I thought so, because his wife had the same.
That was his name when he died, was Danny Blitz.
was Blitz, Blitz, and here's a picture of Danny with Billy F. Gibbons, a guy that went to my high school where I graduated, Robert E. Lee in Houston. Of course, ZZ Top. Danny was really going places. I mean, he was a very talented musician. He had written a song about, I think it's called I'd Like to Be Ozzy's Son, about Ozzy Osbourne,
Yeah.
about being his son. And that song got so popular that it was actually part of an episode of the Osbournes. It was because I think Ozzy heard it or Jack Osbourne heard it, and they liked it so much they made it part of the show. Danny was really talented. He was in the software business too, which I didn't know. I did all this catching up. Once you told me his name was Blitz.
I had heard that also.
Yeah. So he wrote this book here called Herding Tigers about being in the software business. And he talks about, actually, the part you can read free, it's on Amazon. He talks about when he got sick. And he was working as a software engineer, and he had a huge seizure, and he fell on the floor. And a couple of his coworkers, one was an ex-military vet from Afghanistan or something, and another guy was a former police officer or some kind of, like he said, there was the two perfect guys to be around, and they got him to the hospital, and they found out he had a brain tumor, but they didn't tell him that yet until he went back the following Monday to get surgery. And he had the tumor surgery to remove this massive tumor in his brain. And it left him where, they removed as much as they could, and then he could not use his left arm anymore. So he couldn't play guitar. And this guy's a phenomenal, when I say he's a phenomenal guitar player, it's an understatement how good he was. And so he was devastated. Of course, he can't play anymore, but he persevered, like you said, for like another 9 years. And because they saved his life, but he was still, a really hard existence when he can't play guitar anymore, because that was his lifeblood. But here's another picture of him, I think from the video from the Ozzy song. But yeah, he passed away on August 11th, 2012. So it's been 11 years. But I just thought, wow, when you said Danny Philpot, it was just all came together what happened to this guy. So yeah, rest in peace, Danny. And do you know if Danny ever told anyone he thought him getting a brain tumor was related to being at Wilkerson?
That I don't know. I don't know that I've ever asked anybody that knew him well. That I don't know. Yeah, I know some of the other people I've talked to did feel that their illnesses were, but Danny, no, because I didn't know at the time.
Yeah, but looking back, it just seems to make. Looking back, it makes sense. And I talked about it, and it's just one of these things, like you said, it's talked about through the years, and then it just comes rushing back to the forefront for whatever reason. And I know so many of these people have contacted you to tell them, hey, Mark, I think I got this illness from attending Wilkerson because, as I said in the other video, and you and I talked about, and my sister could attest to, who went there as well, is the smell that went through that school. You can't understate how bad it was. And I remember it more because you said you got used to it from attending it, and maybe my sister could agree, but when they came home, it would knock you down. When if your sibling went to that school and they came home, you knew it when they walked through the door, because that smell was so potent.
Yeah, almost everybody, like I said, I never really smelt it. But the minute I walked through the door, all of our mothers, if you had one that stayed at home, the minute you walked in the door, she would be telling you, go get your clothes, take those school clothes off. You're smelling up the whole house, because it was an awful smell. Nobody thought that smell was in any way anything but offensive.
It was offensive. I mean, if anybody watching right now remembers that Wilkerson smell, I never smelled it again, and I'd know it if I did. And I want to try to get in contact with some of the phenol.
I haven't either.
And because I know it would come, I'd know it immediately. I could never forget it. It was so bad. And I actually talked to my mother about it today. Remember when she would go up to Wilkerson and ask about it, and all the teachers or the people working up front would say, "What smell? We don't smell anything." They literally told her that, like, we don't smell anything. Like, I don't know if they were told to cover that up, or they were literally.
Yeah, how could you not? Everybody had to tell you stunk after you left work. I mean, your friends, your family, you reeked.
Yeah.
So I don't,
it was a reek that you can't overstate it. It was so bad. It was, people knew, and like we were talking about on the phone back then, people would say, well, why would you allow your children to continue to go to that school after you smelled it? And the reason is, one, it was the law to go to school. Number
Yes,
two, you had a certain trust in the authorities, the district, the school principal. You had just, there was just this inherent trust back
very true.
in the
You know,
1970s. We're in Texas here. You had faith in it, that they knew what they were doing and that they were going to fix it.
yeah, my parents totally, you know, had faith in the school that they were doing, that they wouldn't allow the children to be harmed. That's the way my parents felt, you know. Nobody would purposely allow that to happen. But you know, if you wanted to ever get on some of this stuff, some of the
Definitely. I want to talk about, so
sorry, I don't mean to be directing things. If you wanted to,
no, I want to,
I need to follow your direction here.
I want to get into the document, the findings in the documents. We know that, we believe it was the phenol or phenol, the way you pronounce it. I'm not even sure, but which is a shorter version of, let me say it, because I know Chuck sent this to me again, and I said there's a link in the video to what it is, and that's just a shorter version of the longer phrase, which is pentachlorophenol, which is used to treat lumber, to make lumber last longer, and it was a preservative for lumber, basically, that was used a lot. And we'll get into that some, but that's important because the whole thing is, we can all agree that there's something that caused that smell. It's probably this chemical. Was it, like, I know you believe it was all probably in the flooring, and I know Chuck believes in some others, which is really not critical, because we all agree that these people got sick from attending Wilkerson, and we all agree it's probably this chemical. Where the chemical came from, 100%, there's still some debate. Did it come from the carpeting, or the mastic in the carpeting, or the pad of the carpeting, or did it come from the ground, where we know this was a former sawmill? It's the Woodlands, Texas, where they had the Grogan sawmill.
Yes,
and they had what they called dunk ponds, and a lot of this overflow water from all the treated trees, because this is nothing but trees back in the day. And we think that all the water going into these dunk ponds, not duck, it's dunk, D-U-N-K, where they would catch all this water runoff, had these chemicals in it from the sawmills of the Woodlands. And from the treated lumber and all the chemicals used to treat the lumber, which was that stuff we're talking about now. And how did that get into Wilkerson? Was it from when they built it, or did it suck it up through the ground? We don't know. But what were your findings as far as the documents you got a hold of when they went in and the voices got so loud from the smell that they were finally forced to go do some testing of the school?
Yeah, actually, I have a bit of a unique experience with the whole Wilkerson thing. My brother started attending the year it opened. That was 1974. And he started in the 6th grade. While he was there, he was anemic. I thought that was phenol can cause anemia. And then I came in the next year in 75 and went through the 5th and 6th. And then 5 years after I went out, my younger sister started, and that would have been, I think, 81, the year it closed down, halfway through the year. So quite of my family went through the school. But you were asking what were some of the findings by the reports. They came in and tested the air. I believe that was the first test done. Some of the first tests they did were for formaldehyde, which I used to work with formaldehyde. I know that smell is nothing.
Yeah, you're in the medical industry.
That's not the Wilkerson smell at all. But they found in the air, they found 4 types of phenol, and this was actually from the independent lab. What was the name of that?
Yeah, I can remember that was the one that was mentioned in the article.
Spectrix
Spectrix
lab, yes. And they found in the air. It says components identified in Wilkerson Intermediate School air. It was 4 types of phenol. I'll try to do these. Trichloroethane phenol, isopropyl trimethanol phenol, methanol ethyl phenol, and then another chemical, benzothiazole.
Yeah, it's all this weird stuff you can't pronounce.
But they say, and here the report, and it identifies that phenols may be the cause of the odor problem. You have pointed out that the carpet padding in one area of the school is a potential source of the phenols. Testing of the carpet is now underway to determine if phenols are present. Also, soil boring is also being checked for phenols. It says we will have those results and we'll consult with you. And I do somewhere else here. I think I have some of the stuff that was talked about at some of the board meetings. And I thought I had, where is it? Where did they talk about the boring in the school? Oh, it's under here. Well, I wanted to kind of go on a little more about those tests for the phenol in the air. They talk about, there was a graph along with it. Each peak in the graph is a component. The concentrations corresponding to the size of the peaks in the classroom sample, which are not present in the outside air, estimated to be less than 1 part per million. But the method is not an accurate quantitative method. It lists the components identified in the inside air not present in the outside air or at much higher levels than the outside air.
So
but
basically
a more
emitting.
accurate quantitative test requires resampling using a National Institute of Occupational Health and Safety approved method. This could not be done until we identified the components by this other method. And it does say that such a method is available for phenols. And I always thought, well, that's just an estimate. It tells you. Why didn't they want to do a more accurate? If they really wanted to know, it's showing that it's present. I would think you'd want to know.
Exactly. And to your knowledge, they didn't do a deeper level.
No.
It didn't lead to more testing.
I think they kind of got the results they wanted, that they were at less than 1 part or half part per million. So that would be under anything that would cause health hazards. But I also think it's odd because there's 4 types of phenol. So you start adding those together, that number goes up
exponentially.
So now you got 2 to 3 parts per million. And I know, at 3, I read somewhere that can start causing serious health effects. So, you kind of always got to read between the lines with what they're telling you and what's on this stuff.
Right. It was kind of like a slight admission.
Wouldn't that up the amount of phenol if there's 4 different types?
Yeah. Obviously, there's 4 different types. There's 4,
they don't
4 times the level.
The cumulative of them being that. They say each one being at half part. And I believe for them to appear on the test, they have to be at least a half part per million.
No, it makes perfect sense that there was that higher level there, because it's got to be at a high level to cause that amount of odor that literally sticks to your body and your hair. It was just so apparent to the children going to the school and the parents that there's something so wrong here. Why isn't anybody doing anything about it? And then they finally admit, yes, there's some levels of this there, but it's not enough to be alarmed about, so we'll just
it was always Don't be alarmed.
Yeah,
We
don't be
don't.
alarmed. Like they would tell my mom, no, we don't smell anything. And then I guess the complaints got so loud, but by 1981, I mean, I guess the kids start filling it up 75. I think it seems like to be the worst in this 77, 78 area. And then it still smells pretty bad. They eventually close the school and they make all the students go over to Oak Ridge High School, which was new at the time. And I went to Oak Ridge High for a while, and then they had enough room since it hadn't filled up with grades yet. So they put those students over at Oak Ridge High while they did this remediation, correct? And then what did they do during that?
As far as I know, all they really did, because this is a Wilkerson Parents Committee. I think this is possibly a letter to them, or they would have meetings. I know, so this might be, their stuff for the meeting or what they were going to discuss. It says all carpeting has been removed. The concrete floors have been scraped, etc., to remove remaining adhesive. A clear polyurethane coating has been applied to most floor surfaces. Vinyl wall coverings have been removed throughout most of the building, and the walls were in the process of being resurfaced in preparation for painting with an epoxy-based paint.
That's pretty thorough. I mean, they not only scraped all that out and took the flooring out, sealed the concrete, they put some kind of covering over the concrete.
Yeah, they put some type of sealer over the concrete.
And so, how do you know how long the students were over at Oak Ridge? Was it for a semester?
Or, they closed the school, I believe, right as they were going into the winter break, the Christmas break.
So that bought them some time.
1981.
So
then they finished out that year at Oak Ridge.
And then
the following year, after the summer, they came back to the school.
And by most reports, the smell was not totally gone, or was it totally gone when the students returned?
From what I understand, most people said it was. They said the school still had just a smell, but it wasn't the same smell, and it wasn't offensive like it was before or anything. But they did say it still had kind of a smell, but I don't know if that could have just been, new building type smell from new construction, because they said it wasn't the old smell.
Right. But
as far as I know, it got rid of the odor.
Yeah.
I think I have, through some of this in some of the meetings they have, and letters to the parents or the school board and stuff, they talk about after some of it, there was still a slight odor in some certain areas. I think one being the teacher's lounge. So they put ionizers.
Wow.
In those areas and ran them for like a week or several days, a weekend, something like that. And they said that seemed to get rid of the odor.
Yeah, that reminds me of this one article here that you had, this one document. It said, our industrial hygienist has investigated this odor on different complaints in the past. At that time, he recommended that to obtain a better ventilation to reduce the odor by increasing the fresh air mix at the air handler to about 10% of the air circulated. It is still believed that you should do this. Let me blow this up. Okay. We expect the fresh air solution will eliminate complaints. If not, or we can be, or if any further assistance to you, please feel free to call us. So their whole goal here was to stop the complaining.
That's what I thought too when I read that. They just wanted this to go away. We want to stop these complaints, because they started from the very beginning of the school. So by this time, they have been going on for years.
Yeah. Do you remember what year you were first at Wilkerson? Because Mark asked a question. Do you remember what year the smell first showed up? I mean, I would assume it was the first year, but
it was there from the day it opened.
The day it opened. Okay. So was that 75?
74.
74. Okay, I knew the school was built in
74.
74, but I didn't know if it opened
I
in
started in
74.
75, so the
Okay.
second year. But I
Okay.
believe the effects, back then they would try to make the buildings pretty airtight because it was all conserving energy. They were real into the recycling type thing. And so the whatever was giving off the vapor, which I do believe it was somehow the carpet and or padding, it just got worse. I think it built up in the building because each year the kids seemed to get a little sicker and a little sicker and a little sicker.
That's a great point, because it's being absorbed more, I think. And talking to Bill earlier today, what he thought was, if it was coming from the ground, when they built Wilkerson and they had and they were actually mixing the concrete, they could have used the water from the contaminated water from one of the dunk ponds and mixing the concrete, or spraying the concrete with that water from, using a pump from down in the well and getting that bad water, spraying the concrete because it would set up too fast. We're talking about 1973 and 4 when they're building this foundation for Wilkerson.
Yeah.
That wouldn't have been unheard of, to be using that water to either spray the foundation or mixing it into the concrete. Because when talking to Chuck Foreman, he said that I think Knox Junior High, which is literally just down the street on Sawmill Road, where when you got out of Wilkerson, you go into junior high at Knox, where my sisters went as well, and I know you did. That Knox didn't have these problems. Like, Knox did not smell them, and from what Chuck believed was that Knox was built by the same contractor with the same materials.
And I've always wondered, that was brought up by a lot of people. They were like, if it was the carpet, where did the carpet come from? What company made this carpet? Was it installed in other schools? And did they have the same problem and nobody talked about? Are we the only ones? And I don't know if anybody ever looked in and found out actually where the carpet, what company manufactured it or anything.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't.
It could have been kind of like,
heard people talk about it, but I don't know that anybody's dug into that.
I mean, through the years, it could have either by osmosis or from spraying the concrete, mixing the concrete when they build it, or like you said, you thought yesterday, or you thought there may have been a flood. Something activates this chemical that was used on the trees, and it gets up into this new flooring, and it just attaches to it. Because I know you said that. Back then, Wilkerson was like 90% carpet, like including the cafeteria. It wasn't a regular flat floor. It was a carpet, and it was
entire school. The only place that I don't remember carpet were the restroom area. Around the water fountain. Other than that, our cafeteria, everything was carpeted.
Yeah, my sister said, "Did you go to 7th grade at McCullough?"
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, he did, Jen. Of course, yeah. So now McCullough, the building of McCullough is now the Woodlands Junior High, and then they built Woodlands High School now, for people that don't know. But yeah, I'd forgotten when I shot that live piece in front of Wilkerson how close Knox was. I'd forgotten that it's literally
just right down the road.
Right down the road, and for what Chuck remembered, they had built it at the same time. So I think what people can agree on, like I know we do, there was chemicals present at Wilkerson that made a lot of people sick, and they did not want to admit it. And they would do tests and studies, and if anything came back bad enough, they just got rid of it. They were just like, hey, shut it down. And then when the complaints got so loud, they sealed the concrete, like you mentioned. They redid the walls, and the smell started going away, and everybody, life going back to normal. Like don't even talk about it anymore.
Yeah, I believe they always wanted to just really ignore this and hoped it would just eventually somewhere down the road go away. But it just, each year it was getting worse, and the kids were really getting pretty sick. And I know my sister was, like I said, going to school there at the time. And she came back one day from school saying the news media had showed up on the playground asking kids about the smell and were they sick or having headaches. And I was all, I was kind of surprised. I'd forgotten all about it at that time.
Yeah, I'd forgotten it too. Or if I knew it, I forgot
still
it.
Going on? And she was like, I said, that kids were having headaches and nausea when I was there. And she's, well, now they're throwing up and having reactions. And I was, really? Well, I guess a parent got tired of being ignored and went and talked to the media down in Houston, and they showed up on the playground. And my sister said the next day the line of parents was out the door.
Yeah.
And they were angry.
Yeah. I mean, that's what started all.
That's what made them start doing the testing and all this. And the parents
that got them to have to do something, because that
parent committee.
They shed some, they put a little sunlight on it, and they had to do something. My sister just said she must have been in your homeroom. She said class of '83 said you must have been in her homeroom. Sorry, she didn't get to know you.
Oh, I told you I recognized your last name.
yeah. She said you probably were in her homeroom.
I know that name.
Yeah. So that was funny. It. Like they covered it on local Houston news, and they didn't like that because the Woodlands was just growing, and obviously Woodlands is huge now. I mean, you got the pavilion, you got the mall, you've got so many subdivisions. It just exploded in population because people moving there, because it's such a great community with all these. Everything in the Woodlands is covered in trees. Like, you try to go find a retail center in the Woodlands, it's hard to find, even if you live there, because it's literally covered with trees. Where's the Kroger?
He created a great place to live and grow up.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. I mean, there's just trees and lakes and golf courses that are great. But when this was all going down at Wilkerson, they didn't want any bad press. That's for sure. They don't. They didn't.
See, it was his little pet. It was a new thing. It was a new idea, like you had said, a pre-planned community. It was one of the first that I'm aware of that they kind of.
Yeah. It was a master plan thing because he got inspired to do it.
Master plan.
Yeah, master plan community. George Mitchell didn't know what he was going to do with all this land. He didn't buy it with that intent. That's for sure. But he later got this idea of this master plan community where you could live, and I think he had all the right reasons to do it. And eventually he sold to, I think, the Howard Hughes Company, and then it became Woodlands Development or whatever. But he sold out years and years ago before he died. But they did not want anybody talking about it. They did not want anybody talking about environmental problems in the Woodlands. Are you kidding? They're going to shut that down.
The news, they were like, we got to get this out of the news, so we're on it. That was kind of their deal. We are on this. The district is on this. We are doing everything possible.
Don't upset George Mitchell, who's a billionaire who does not want the bad press. We have all these brand new neighborhoods exploding. We're selling lots. We're selling spec homes. We don't want the bad publicity. We don't want, hey, the Woodlands is contaminated out there. And believe me, they were going to stop it at all costs. I mean, they didn't want this discussion happening. They still don't. There's probably people out there that still don't. And it's not about trying to go back and sue anybody, because like you mentioned yesterday, a lot of these people are already not with us anymore. They've already died from the illnesses that we believe happened from Wilkerson. And this is about getting the word out and making people aware and not think you're going crazy to a line. Like my sister said, if she ever got cancer, she's automatically going to think it's from being going to Wilkerson because it's so prevalent. When you just bring up a name at random and it's somebody that I remember and they died at a young age, because it's like you said, you get on the Facebook groups from McCullough and you're like, wow, another one passed away in their 50s. Yeah. It's not normal to have that many people that attended that school to not be alive now.
Yeah, which a lot of people say, they do ask like, well, what's wrong with everybody today? And I was like, oh man, the list can be kind of long. When I researched phenol and stuff and looked into it, there's not a part of the body it doesn't affect and pretty much damage. I know it can it damages the brain and central nervous system, which I believe that's what causes a lot of autoimmune and MS. Because if I'm correct, that's nerve damage. I think
nerve damage. Yes, I think that's what caused the MS.
And it heavily damages the kidneys, the liver. It can affect the eyes if the absorption, if it's, if you're exposed to quite a bit of the vapors, which I do remember people complaining about red eyes. when they were at the school, their eyes burning. So
Yeah, I can't remember if my sisters had that or not. And I asked my other sister today, did she remember if she got headaches? And she didn't remember. But
I never did. I always felt fine there. Actually, I never ever had a headache, but I don't get many headaches throughout my
yeah,
life. So,
yeah.
but I never
It-
had one headache. I never was nauseous. But one of my friends, uh, I think he saw your thing in the show we were going to do, and he sent me a message, and he was saying, I so remember the smell of the stuff they put on vomit
on what?
because there always seemed to be somebody getting sick every day somewhere in the school. That I remember that stuff
Oh,
they'd spread on. Somebody
yeah.
got sick, the custodians would come and sprinkle some stuff on it,
Yeah, it
and
was
then
like a
later
powder. Was it like a powder?
Mhm. Yeah, it was like a sawdust mixed with something that would absorb
Yeah.
it.
That's
And
amazing.
he
He
was
had that
like,
memory.
I just got, you smelt that. He goes, I remember the smell of that stuff all the time because somebody was always vomiting
That's
at the
amazing. He could
school. And
remember
it's
that.
like, you're right. Now that I think about that, every day
Yeah,
it
my
seems
sister just
like
said
a
yes.
couple of
She just
places
said
in the
yes
school,
because she
somebody
remembers
was
that.
throwing up.
Yeah,
I mean,
she
that was a
remembers that.
regular sight in the school was vomit.
That's
I just
amazing because
figured
that's
it was
how
part of
often
growing
people
up.
would throw up at Wilkerson. Yeah, she said flashbacks now because that just came rushing back. It's weird how one little thing will jog your memory like that,
Yeah,
like your
because
friend
I
saying
didn't
that.
think about that till my friend mentioned that. And it's like, man, he's right. There
Yeah,
was
then you look
always
back because
somebody throwing
it
up.
was normal
It's,
back then, but now you look back and it's like, no, that wasn't normal. Like once in a
yeah,
while, some
because
kid's going to get sick at lunch or whatever because he ate something
yeah, I
bad.
just
Like
thought,
maybe once a week.
somebody got sick at school again.
But it was so often at Wilkerson they had their own concoction to throw on it.
Well, I think that was the normal thing back in the day that they had. I remember the smell of it. It was nasty.
I'll never forget the smell. And I'm going to put this picture up. So here are some people that I know. I know one of these people in these pictures. Well, it's just four people that I did pictures of here that are either mentioned in the Chronicle article. Um, One Cynthia Hancock. I think she went by Cindy. She's very well liked. Um, I talk about her in the last video I did because she got MS, multiple sclerosis, and she believes it was from Wilkerson. And I think she passed away. I can't remember how many years ago. It's been a while now, but I put up some of her Facebook posts, which are just devastating about how she's just going to give up. She can't go on anymore taking her MS treatment. It ravaged her. She was so well liked by all her friends. I didn't know her. I'm sure I knew people that knew her, but she's, one of the people I think about a lot. Of course, I think about Chris Eisinger a lot. Chris is fortunately still with us, but Chris came down with MS about 15, 16 years ago. I might be off on that. But Chris was my cousin's best friend. And I remember when I heard that Chris was diagnosed with MS, he had nobody in his family with it, no reason to get it. I immediately thought it was Wilkerson. And of course, Chris believes it was from Wilkerson. So you got two people near the same age getting MS that I know of and knowing Chris. And there's a lot more that got MS and cancers like Danny. There's a picture here of Michelle Christner, who Michelle's still alive. I know has been in contact with you, and she had a twin sister that was unfortunately killed in a car accident. But I think when they did, I think they might have done an autopsy after she passed away from the car accident, and they did find levels of phenol in her system when she died. Do you know anything about that?
Actually, it was when they were young attending the school. Um, Michelle had a reaction in the shower, and
Right.
as it turns out, her and my little sister were somewhat friends back then, and she lived down the street from us, her and her twin sister. I do remember them, and she told my sister about the skin off the palms of her hands and the soles of her feet just coming off in one big white sheet,
Right.
and
Which is
it
something
freaked her out,
that yeah, that's
And
Michelle
her
remembered
parents
that.
were complaining to the school, and the school just kind of ignored them. So they took their kid to the doctor, and they had urinalysis done on them. And Michelle didn't, but her sister tested positive for phenol poisoning. So that's when
Right.
they were children.
Yes.
Which she's
And,
tried to get a hold of the doctor and see if she could find those records of that. And those records are old. They destroy a lot of medical records. So her doctor actually came down with Alzheimer's. And so
wow.
they told her her family or his family told her all those records had been destroyed years ago. But she
Oh, the
does remember,
picture,
and
I
I think
screwed up here.
I have a letter somewhere in all his paperwork from her. I think it was one of her parents to the school about their daughter testing positive.
From Christner.
Yes,
Yeah,
I
I know.
believe it was.
Yeah, and thanks,
I don't
Angela.
know what happened to it, but I'd have
Thanks,
to
Angela,
find
for
it.
that correction, because I have a picture up of I think it's Alana, and she said it's actually Christina. So yeah, I screwed that up. I might have been a picture of both of them, and I put up the wrong one. So sorry about that. So thank you for correcting that, Angela, because I know you knew them. But I know what Chuck Foreman told me was that uh, Michelle's father was really adamant about getting to the source of what was making his daughter sick, and that he actually wanted to deliberately go to a doctor outside of the Woodlands area because he wanted to get the skinny on what was wrong with his daughters. Like he told Chuck or someone that he went as
Yeah,
far as 1960 to get out of the Woodlands area because he felt like all the doctors around there were I hate to use the
going to
term
be
in on
part
it,
of
but
the cover up. He
part of
felt
the
that
cover up.
everything was
Yes.
being covered up.
Yes.
I
And that
do
made so
remember
much
that.
sense to me that Mr. Christner or whatever her father's name was went to somewhere off of closer to Houston to get the real deal on it, and they thought that that's what was going on for sure, and that he had also been in contact with I think George Mitchell's son, who had something to do with the development of it, who either admitted it or something like, yeah, there was that the chemicals were present in the area when the school was built, and I might be wrong on that. So, but I do know that he took the daughters to the doctor that was out of the Woodlands area because he felt like they were not going to give him the real story of what was going on at Wilkerson.
Yeah, I did find that surprising that they actually tested positive
Yeah,
and that's the whole thing. That's another deal in all of this. They never looked at one child. They never interviewed one child, never talked to one kid or did a medical exam in any way, shape, or form. So in all these things they would say over and over again, we feel no toxic environment exists in the school
yeah,
because there's no evidence. And it's like a bunch of sick kids. How can that not be evidence? Is walking
yeah.
around right in front of you.
They're walking around. They're sick. They reek. They reek like you wouldn't believe. Like I'll never forget that smell. As long as I live, I'm not going to forget it. My sisters would reek. It was in their hair. My mom would have to have my sisters wash their hair. It was so thick. And I think it might have been more like with my younger sister, Julie, that it was just so thick. It was just tarry, chemical, had like a sweetness to it in a way. I had to use that word, but it was this sicky, sweet, chemical, tarry smell that you just couldn't
Yeah,
get
I
rid of.
can't. It's always people ask what did it smell like, and it's always a hard one to describe. Like the strangest smell ever.
Yeah.
Horrible.
My sister said, "Do you know of any teachers that had problems?"
Yes, I was actually Facebook friends with a couple of them. I think I still am on some. Yeah, one of them, she has thyroid issues, I think, and she has, I think maybe was it Crohn's disease? She has couples of pretty bad autoimmune disorders.
Yeah, there seems to be a
And
lot
I
of
want to
autoimmune.
say that seems to be the same thing with the other teacher. It was a couple of the teachers.
Yeah. A while back, I
And
did
they
find
did.
an
Because one of them even mentioned she was pregnant with her kids while teaching at school, and she always wondered, did it hurt her babies,
but we
'Cause I
never
don't
found out
know
if it did.
um, I don't know if her kids were born with problems or not. I don't remember
Yeah.
everything.
My younger sister has a child with cerebral palsy. She went to Wilkerson. I don't know that it caused it. She could have something else that caused it because he was born prematurely, my nephew, but we don't know. Could have been Wilkerson, maybe. We'll never know. That's such the bad part about it is so many people went there that did experience a high level of problems. Like we were talking yesterday, if you found a similar school, similar size, let's just say somewhere else in Conroe, and you did a survey of all the students, how many got cancer, how many got MS, how many had children with birth defects, how many were couldn't have children at all, or lupus, or just take all that and if you had a perfect way to survey all that and match up the numbers from Wilkerson's to that other school, you would probably be blown away by how high all these illnesses are for people that attended Wilkerson and how it all goes back.
Because there's a lot. It seems like a lot of my friends, everybody seems to have one issue or another.
Yeah.
You were asking stuff. A lot of people were curious about whether, which I was too, whether it was coming from underground.
Yes.
Or was it from the surface? If you want to believe some of the tests, I think this was, again, a committee. This was to the parents' committee. But it talks about the chemical analysis of samples from the air within Wilkerson School, carpet material removed from the floor, and concrete floor at the surface obtained from various levels below the floor, conducted by the Texas Department of Health, and independently by Spectrix Laboratory, revealed the presence of a variety of chemicals. The highest concentration of these chemicals was at the surface and diminished rapidly and proportionately with increased depth from the surface. This suggests that the chemicals were introduced from the surface of the floor rather than by seepage into the school from the ground below the concrete floors.
That's interesting. So, yeah, that's true. That would eliminate the duck pond and the anything treating the lumber. So then you would have to be talking about building materials brought in, like the carpet or the that just happened to not be the one used at Wilkerson. At Knox, maybe. That's interesting, because you're right. If there's truth to that document, unless it was such a big conspiracy, they just wanted to get people off of the environmental part, and they thought, well, let's contain it to whoever built it, as opposed to the Woodlands is contaminated. But yeah, that's interesting. And then what was the part about the music room? Wasn't the music room, was that built later?
It was built at the same time, but it was finished later than the rest of the school. It was being constructed at the same time, but it was carpeted at a later date. The carpet looked just like the other carpet.
Mm-hmm.
But it was carpeted at a later date, and it was on a separate ventilation system. So,
and that room never had problems.
They noted that room never had an odor.
Wow. So the ventilation would obviously help with the smell, maybe from other parts of the school, but the big deal was it didn't have that carpet. And if it got carpeted at a later date, maybe it was the unaffected carpet.
Because I believe in that, on that document where he states about it, that that room was carpeted at a later date and never had the odor because it was on separate ventilation. He said that he felt that gave some credence to the carpet theory.
Yes, I think it does.
It was coming from the carpet.
So that was kind of
another one where they pointed at the carpet.
Yeah,
I believe that was the guy from the Department of Health that made that statement.
No, that gives that's interesting. So for whatever reason, the music room just wasn't carpeted earlier on, or maybe they didn't want carpet in there, or I wonder what the story was, why the
I
music
don't
room
know. I
didn't
guess that
hit the
was just
carpet.
behind the rest of the building or something. I don't know why. Yeah, I don't really. I think it was finished quite a bit later than the rest of the school.
So
I
obviously the
it's
room
like
couldn't be
I think
used
they may
until
have
it was
opened
done.
the other part of the school and not the. It was kind of like they called it the music room. We called it the
Yeah.
band hall.
The band, were you in band? My sister just asked, were you in band?
No, I never was. I never went in that
Okay, she
part of the
was.
school. I never even stepped in there, so I don't even know the room they're talking about.
Yeah, but when we say music room, it's like the band hall, what you would call, I guess maybe call a band hall,
That's
where it
what
was bigger.
I think that's what
Yeah,
us
which is a
kids
bigger room.
called
It's
it, the
not just
band
like
hall.
Yeah, it's not just like a regular classroom size. It's bigger than a regular
Yeah.
classroom. Yeah, she said, or the glue used for the carpet, like when you talk about asbestos, uh, they like I'm in retail real estate. I manage retail shopping centers, and if I ever had anything really old, or I just know about it, sometimes I had some older buildings that would have a vinyl tile, what they call VCT tile, and if you'd ever pull it up and see the black stuff under it, that could be most likely positive for asbestos, and that was the glue mastic that would put that floor down. So that's one thing that I thought about with Wilkerson. Was it the mastic? But I know this isn't asbestos we're talking about. We were never talking about asbestos. This is the phenol.
Yeah, yeah. Some people have, a lot of stuff gets thrown around, and some people were like, "Oh, it was asbestos related." And it's like, no, that's not what it was.
Yeah. My sister said
That's
she thought that they would meet in the cafeteria at first because she was in band before that music
oh,
room was
yeah.
finished.
See, so it seems like, well, no, I started the next year, but it seems like I do remember them talking about that being open later, a little later than the rest of the school when it first opened.
So here's this other one. I don't know if I put this one up, this one that you had. It says, we are pleased to report that at this time, we did not note any violation of OSHA standards. You are to be congratulated for providing a safe and helpful workplace. However, we inspected the building for odors and reviewed materials and practices for the safe use of cleaning agents, detergents, waxes, and polishers. No hazardous conditions relating to the safety and health standards were observed. Also refer to health report for recommendations and or information pertaining to harmful odors. That just seems like they're kicking it down the road a little.
And yeah, when we talked about that, and you were like, really? They looked at the cleaning agents and stuff. It made me think of a story. Gina Parsons, which is one of the people, she says that she's been sick from the day.
Yeah, please talk about
that
Gina.
building.
Sorry, yeah. Please
And
talk
she
about
also
Gina.
has MS today.
Gina has MS?
Yeah, Gina's got MS. I think along with some other autoimmune. But when she was growing up, her mother was very concerned that she was so sick all the time. She was like, before this school, she was healthy.
Was
And
she in
there's
your grade?
She's like, yeah, she was the class of 83.
Her name
So
sounds
she
really
was,
familiar.
her mother was pretty persistent, I think, with complaining to, I think our Mr. Clay was our principal. But, they kind of kept, like you said, just, well, it's really nothing. It's really nothing. And she's always taking her to the doctor. She's always sick. And she's like, they're telling me it's nothing. But she started telling her, the doctor, about the smell, how the school had this horrible odor. And she's like, smell her, it penetrates them. And he's kind of thought that was odd. And Gina said she was embarrassed to death, but put out her arm, and the doctor sniffed her, and he thought it smelled antiseptic-like. And he wrote a letter for them to give to the school, and told them to have the cleaning agents checked that they weren't using too much.
Because something was affecting the skin.
He felt that he thought it smelled antiseptic. She's like, there's almost an antiseptic around. They must be using too much of whatever they're disinfecting the school with. They're cleaning it. So I think that's why they did that, looked at that, because I know she said the doctor gave a letter to give to the school.
That's amazing. Yeah, I thought it was just so that, yeah. So obviously you and I know there's too many stories, and you've heard so many, and so many people contact you to tell their story that certain people had to have known that there's something bigger going on, and they weren't about to demolish the school. They weren't going to just say, we're not going to bring them back, because they needed the building. I'm sure, I don't know what that
Yeah.
building cost, but I'm sure it was in the millions. It's a new
I'm
community.
sure.
They didn't want anything bad about the Woodlands getting out. We know, but there had to have been people within Conroe Independent School District. The superintendent had to have known this is a massive problem, and we just make it go away. Just make it go away. Like, we're not gonna tear the school down, but make it go away.
And I think there was, and when they did all these tests, everything always pointed to the carpet. But then when they did the tests on the carpet, it totally came up negative, which I always thought was odd. And I think the parents back then thought that was odd. But so I was always like, somewhere the answer has to be in front of me. And here is, you were asking me, I think, about this one earlier. It was Mr. Waddell. This is from the Texas Department of Health. Mr. Waddell is the man that keeps coming out and looking at the school.
Yeah,
it
he's
was
a state
Mr.
official.
Waddell's opinion that the unpleasant odor was present throughout the building, with the exception of Mrs. Little music room. This room was carpeted at a later date than the rest of the building and is on separate ventilation system, giving some credence to the thought that the odor comes from the carpet. We will begin tests on the carpet samples as soon as we receive them from you. And this is addressed to Jim Amos, the superintendent of Conroe Independent School District.
Yep, Jim Amos
so
was the superintendent.
It was his responsibility. I would think the Texas Department of Health would send out their own person who would take those samples and make sure that they didn't get contaminated or weren't faked. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it could have been easily done back then.
Type of thing. But I mean, like you said, there was a level of trust back then.
Level of trust.
I think they trusted people to just who's going to think somebody would send in a fake sample. But they had a lot to lose.
The Woodlands had a lot to lose. Conroe Independent School District, Amos had a lot to lose. Like I said, the Woodlands was about to just take off like a rocket, and it did. Look what happened. The Woodlands is huge community, and they didn't want anything bad to stop this mass migration into the Woodlands by saying, well, we found this school there that children got sick and died, or these illnesses that can kill you because either the ground was contaminated or whatever the problem was. They just wanted to shut it down.
Yes, I think they were like, if everybody found out the truth, they'd want to sue us. We've been poisoning, we've been poisoning them, telling them it's nothing all these years, and then find out, no, it's kind of serious. It's pretty serious.
Yeah, and I was always
curious, kind of possibly like, how many people went through that school through those years? And
I can't imagine the numbers.
I think I read through some of the news articles. It was 990 something students, I think. So it was almost 1,000 students. And I remember the school being full from the day I started attending. So that was 75. So I think it was always full. All our schools were always overcrowded the minute they built
it. They were. They needed the school.
But so I kind of figured it up. And if you start out with 1,000 students and then 500 come out, 500 go in, for the years that it occurred, I came up with 4,500 people.
I bet you that's roughly. a great
roughly.
Estimate.
If you add teachers and staff and all that, I would think the number would be about 4,500 people.
That's a
lot of people.
That's a lot of people. And I asked Chuck Foreman, because he was the clearinghouse, and he was building a spreadsheet. Anonymously, people would contact Chuck about various problems. I think it started with a close friend of his that went to Wilkerson. Chuck did not, but he was the first one that was really trying to catalog and make a spreadsheet of all the different ones. And I asked him, what's a number you're comfortable with, Chuck, about how many people contacted you about illnesses that they believe they got from Wilkerson. And he said it's been a while. And then he actually contacted me a little bit later by text and said he's really comfortable with the number of 400. That's stunning. That is a stunning number. I mean, to come with what you're saying around 4,500, we're talking about 400 percentage wise. And then you think about all the people that never knew what caused their illness that may have gone through there.
Yes.
Part of that 4,500 students that are moved away from the area never could find anything on it because there's so little out there about it. That's why we're doing this show. And,
not
because there's really only the one article.
Talk about it.
Yeah, they're not willing to talk about it. So if you're talking about 4,500 and Chuck knowing about around 400, and I don't know how many people have contacted you, but I know that they're in the definitely probably a number north of 30 or 40 that have contacted you personally or on your Facebook with all these illnesses
on Facebook.
And some of the ones that you've interacted with probably aren't even accounted for on what Chuck found. So you're, easily 500 or 600 out of 4,500, and then you double that for the people that don't even know about it. So you're probably 1,200 easily. This is like all roads go back to Wilkerson.
Yeah. I had a friend that moved away and he was visiting, and he's not big on the internet or Facebook, so he didn't really keep in touch or nothing. But he finally came back, and I think somebody had passed away, and I mentioned something about the school. And he was, well, what about Wilkerson? I said, the whole smell thing, and they think it was phenol and stuff. He's like, I don't know what you're talking about. What do you mean the smell? I don't remember it having a smell. It's like, what? You don't remember that, Russell? He's, no, I don't remember a smell. So, well, that's kind of the way it worked. But I started telling him about it, and I started mentioning the effects of what phenol can do. And I said, it can cause you to be anemic and stuff. He was, what? I said, yeah, it can cause anemia. And he goes, that's interesting. I was, why? And he goes, I just went to the doctor like a couple of months ago, and he told me I was anemic. And he goes, I thought that was a strange thing. Why would I be anemic?
Yeah, there's no reason to be.
I don't know why I would be anemic. And he goes, so that's interesting. And he was like, I never knew none of this.
Yeah, he probably
did. Away.
That's a good point.
Anything about it.
Yeah, for people that went there every day, you probably just got used to the smell. And maybe if you didn't have a sibling there or something, you might not have known how bad it was. But I bet you're right. There's probably people that went there that never even knew that there was a smell or thought about it or talked about it at home.
He never knew anything about it, or that people were even talking about, man, a lot of people are dying. You think it's connected to Wilkerson? He doesn't remember any of it.
Yeah.
But he thought it was surprising to him when he was like, really? Because I was anemic and I didn't know why.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's interesting for sure.
Yeah. And then when you suggested Wilkerson, now it makes sense.
Mm-hmm. I was like, well, I think there's something to it. He goes, well, you might be onto something,
Yeah.
It's hard to even convince some people that have problems that it could be, they'll go, no. I know I have some friends, they'll know it has nothing to do with Wilkerson.
I don't see how it could not be linked to Wilkerson.
I don't know how you come up to that conclusion, but okay.
Yeah, the smell was just so hard. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be a few cases that people are going to get cancer, especially when they get older. And some people do get cancer at young ages. It's tragic, but they do. But if you add up all the ones that happened from Wilkerson and MS, MS is one that really sticks out to me because
to me too.
The only person I personally know with MS went to Wilkerson. And I mean, I work in Houston. I'm 54 years old. I know of other people that know people with MS, but I only personally could say I know one who happened to go to Wilkerson. It's just too. Yeah, I mean, cancer is one thing, and I'm sure a lot of these cancers, like Danny's, are probably from Wilkerson just because he's so young and there's so many. But the MS is what really stands out to me. It's not normal to have that many cases of MS for that many people. There's no way, because it's, that's different than cancer, where there's going to be cancers coming up for whatever reason. But MS is not as common as cancer. It's not. And it seems like there's equal amount of MS.
On the Facebook page, a lot of when I go through and I'm reading the comments, when people comment about the school stuff, a lot of them have MS.
It's crazy
Some
because
of
the
them,
only
I
thing
have
that I
MS too, and blah blah blah, and they all talk about their MS.
yeah, that's not that
Yeah,
alone is a major red flag because I don't
yeah,
know
I
anyone else
agree.
personally with it. I don't. I've heard of other people have it, but I don't know anyone else personally that has it that did not go to Wilkerson. So that makes no sense that there's that much MS. Whatever
Yeah,
was in that
I
stuff
don't.
triggers it.
I don't ever remember it being very common, but yeah, several people I went to school with have it, and it's like
Yeah,
that
that's
seems
yeah,
odd.
yeah, that's not normal. That's the MS alone. It would be the first thing that I'm going to point, hone in on, and I'm sure the cancers too, because it's probably a carcinogen or I'm sure the cancer rates are off the charts for Wilkerson, but the MS is it really sticks out because not that it's not near as common. I mean, if there's MS cases versus cancer cases per year, you got one here and one way up here with cancer. And then, like you said on the Facebook group for Wilkerson, this person's got MS. This person, we show up a random picture of four of the people that went to Wilkerson, and half of them have MS.
Yeah.
It's not. There's something at Wilkerson that caused that MS, and it had to be that. And I guess they just like said they just don't want to start over. They can't admit it. Were they going to tear the school down? No. So they
Oh,
just,
yeah.
they just shove it under the rug,
They
literally.
had tried to blow it off for so long. When they kind of finally got the truth, I think they were like cornered. The school
Hmm.
was, we can't let this be known. That the kids were really being, we can't let this be known. I just think they were afraid of the community's reaction. Definitely lawsuits. There have been some very upset parents, very upset parents. So
Very,
I think
very
they were
upset.
just like, we can't ever let the source or what it truly was be found, because a lot of people still don't. They still deny really kind of that it was even phenol. Well, there was just a little bit found in the air, and it was found at very low levels.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Like just
kind of all they
admit to just
say.
enough. Admit to just enough that something's tiny, a little bit off, but not off enough to cause
Yeah, but we
kids to
never
get
found
sick.
the source, and everything showed that there was not a toxic environment. I mean,
Right.
everything, all these documents state that over and over again, that this toxic environment did not exist.
Yeah. It's comical because we know that it did. We know the smell. They had to have covered it up because it was, you can't say it enough. I'll never forget that smell, and I'll make this promise. I'm gonna find some source of phenol somewhere, and I'll know immediately if it was Wilkerson because that smell is seared into my brain. I'll never forget it. I mean, I remember walking into that school like it was yesterday, and just you would knock you down. It was so strong, it would knock you down. It was like it wasn't a faint over in the corner deal. It was like, whoa. I mean, there's something critically going on here. I mean, it was unmistakable when, especially when you didn't go there every day and you just showed up out of the blue to like you've never been to Wilkerson, you never had it on you, and you just walk in that school in 1977, 8, 9. It would be like oh my god, like I cannot believe
Yes.
people are in this building. Like you don't smell that. It was it would literally like it was a force. I mean, of
Yeah.
smell. It was like it
Oh, it
permeated
knocked
every
you over.
hallway.
I did not smell it while I was attending there, but when my sister was going, which I forgot about the smell actually by the time she was going there. And my mom was taking us both to the dentist. So my mom picked me up at McCullough, and then we went over to Knox to Wilkerson to pick her up. And I walked in with my mother, and just like you said, the second you walk through that threshold, just bam. And it
Yeah.
stops you mid breath. It was like,
Yeah,
oh,
mid
what
breath,
is that smell?
mid
That was
breath.
awful. And I was just like, there's got to be something like dead or rotten. It smelled like
Yeah, like a dead animal.
mildew, dead carpet. It
Yeah,
was
like a,
terrible. And I looked around, and the carpet was clean and dry. And I was, no, is it one of the kids? I looked around. No, I don't think it's none of the kids. And I went up behind my mother. I was, Mom, what is that horrible smell? Do you smell that? And she was, Mark, it's Wilkerson. The smell. And I was in shock because I don't remember it being that way. But that's the smell. Oh my gosh. And I even asked her, I said, that's horrible. It had to have gotten worse. And she took a whiff and maybe a little, but not really. It's always been horrible. And I was like, wow, I don't remember this being this bad, but I got to go outside.
It was that bad. Outside. If you had to go outside and step outside, it was that bad. Like Angela
and then I got impatient and came back in and already couldn't smell it again.
Yeah, like Angela just said, every morning I would smell it, but by the time I got to my class, I didn't notice it. You know, like it would hit her, and then it would go away. I think that was
by the time my sister came walking out, I even pointed it out to my mother. I was like, Mom, can you still smell that smell? And she sniffed and said a little, but nothing like when we walked in. And I said, I already can't smell it at all.
Yeah,
I took a big old whiff. I said, I don't smell it one single
It's weird
bit.
how it would dissipate.
Don't you find that odd?
That was odd that how it would go away so fast.
There's something with that smell.
It had to be chemical in nature because it wouldn't go away that fast. Like if it was like a skunk or something, you know, you wouldn't get used to it as fast as you would get used to this
quickly. I do, understand you acclimate to smells, but not that quick.
Not that quick to something that strong.
I always thought that was odd.
Yeah, like it's so strong. It's like
my parents, that's odd that you acclimate so quick.
So quickly.
Because I used to tell them, I'm telling you, I don't know that it's necessarily hazardous, but there is something up with that smell, and the school doesn't want the truth out.
They don't want the truth out.
We weren't allowed to talk about it in class or nothing. You'd get sent to
do you remember any of that? I wonder if anybody, do you remember them telling you don't talk about the smell?
Yes, very specifically. If anybody, we're going to stop these rumors about the school making people sick. The adults are looking into it, and our job is to teach you, and your job is to learn. And
don't
that's
talk about the smell.
And the teachers even said, we're not allowed to talk about it. No one is. It's being handled by the school, and it's not for y'all to be concerned with. And I always thought that was odd.
That is odd. I don't remember anything like that where the teachers told the students don't talk about it.
Even my little sister, when she was going there, she said, yeah, we would still get in trouble. And we'd get in trouble if you talked about it.
Wow.
I do remember some kids. I would try to talk about it with some kids, and they'd be like, and then
don't even bring it up.
Yeah, because they didn't want to get in trouble, so they wouldn't talk about it. So it worked. I think that was one of their strategies. Don't let the kids
just suppress
talk about it.
Literally suppress it. Just quit talking about it. That's what my mom said. I talked to my mother today, mid 80s, and she said that she would ask the people at the school, what is this? You work here. What is this horrible, wretched smell? And they would literally say, what smell? They didn't say, oh, we're taking care of it. They literally were, just denied it. To her, she remembered it clear as day. She said, what? They said, what are you talking about? Like she was crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. It really is a shame to me what occurred there, because they should have taken more effort. I don't know why they didn't interview the kids.
They never interviewed the kids.
Well, what can be done now? I don't really know. As far as, some people were wanting, legal action or something. I really don't know. I do know that several lawyers immediately tell you, the statute of limitations is
expired.
Yeah. Used to not so much, but they made some new laws, but they're not so new anymore, but they were new at the time. And over chemical exposure type stuff. And I think you only have 2 years or something. You only have
like a small statute of limitation
from the time the exposure happened, or from the time you.
And now we're 30 years on.
Well, nobody ever connected the dots for us.
You couldn't. Look how long it took to manifest. And just because some people went to Wilkerson that did not get MS or cancer or lupus or whatever, it's because people's immune systems are different and they react differently. But if you look at the raw numbers, they're stunning. But yeah, I'm sure the ship sailed on any kind of real legal action. Plus, it's like you're
Yeah,
fighting
because
City
the school
Hall.
got away with always denying it. We never found the
Yeah,
source, and we never
they ran the
found
clock out.
what was causing the smell.
They ran the clock
Even
out.
though phenol's pretty much.
It's got to be. And they ran the clock out, and they knew it. I think if anything at this point, if anybody, if they're still around, because I mean, we're talking about the students affected now are from, I'd say 54 all the way up to 60, and the teachers would be older. But if some of the students could be old to 60 now, or 58, 59 in that range,
Yeah. 58,
add
59.
20 years to that for somebody that might have been an administrator or in CISD, they're probably passed away.
Yeah. Yeah.
So who's around to even take responsibility for what they didn't admit to? I mean, I think Conroe Independent School District, if they ever acknowledge it, yeah, we mishandled this, would be at least a step in the right direction. But I wouldn't hold my breath.
I'm reading some more of the stuff from one of these to the parents committee. And, we're sitting here talking about, I always thought, I was trying to connect the chemical. What was the chemical? And if it was phenol, do the effects match the effects of phenol, the sicknesses at the school at the time, the kids? So trying to find somebody talking about, because that guy he just says headache, nausea. And I know there was more, but they give a more better overview here of it. And they talk about here, the overwhelming majority of recorded complaints attributed to the Wilkerson odor problems were headache, stomachache, and nausea. For the most part, these were of temporary nature and diminished or stopped soon after students departed from the building. However, several students noted continuing problems. A smaller number of complaints were recorded for sore throat, red and burning eyes, allergy and asthma, malaise. I'm not sure if I know what that. And short attention span. Finally, there were a very small number of complaints attributed to the odor of phenol fever.
Phenol fever, yeah, that's what you brought that up.
Chest
phenol
pains,
fever,
redness in the palms of the hands, chest pains, backache, rudeness, dizziness, various mental manifestations, and viral pneumonia. Those sound pretty serious. The phenol
very
fever.
serious.
When
very
I looked
serious.
up phenol, first, phenol does cause, if you're chronically exposed, it causes headache, stomachache, nausea, lethargic stuff, loss of appetite. Almost everything they talk about here. So I thought the things we're at, it's like phenol matches up.
Oh,
I thought it odd on this thing. It says all those talking about the complaints of the children, but here it says there is no reliable evidence that there was an environmental health problem in the Wilkerson school. There is no evidence that the environment at the Wilkerson was deleterious to the health of the students or staff.
What a joke. What a joke.
That's kind of odd. That was on the same.
It's comical. It's sad, but comical at the same time, because it's so evident what happened there. There's not even a question in my mind. This isn't just, it just happened to be more people went to this school and got these health conditions later. And that's nonsense. They knew what it was. They covered it up. That smell was so bad it was like getting hit by a truck when you weren't used to it.
My little sister did say the amount of people throwing up at school and stuff. She's like, it was a lot. I mean, there were several kids throwing up every day at school.
Yeah.
I was like, that kind of went on when I was there. Like,
my other sister texted me when you mentioned that about your friend saying about covering it up. My other sister texted me at the same time and said, yes, the stuff they put in the vomit, covered up the vomit with. I mean, she texted me immediately when she heard us talking about it. Like, she remembered that from Wilkerson. Like, it's just, come on. I don't remember that. I went to a private Catholic school in Conroe, and I should have gone to Wilkerson. I guess I was saved from it, but I don't remember And it's a lot smaller, of course, but I don't remember anybody throwing up. I don't remember anybody throwing up at Catholic school. Well, not even once.
Oh
So,
wow, really?
5
Because
years,
yeah, it
nobody.
seemed normal.
And
I
that
thought
was
it
the
happened at every school.
yeah,
I
that was
thought it was
the
just
grades I
part of
should have
being
been at
in public
Wilkerson.
school.
I should have been at Wilkerson in those grades. I don't. It may have happened. I just don't remember it. But it wasn't so common that they had something to put on it. They probably just get a mop, but I don't remember it.
Oh, it
Like
was so
it wasn't
common. Oh
normal.
yeah, we all remember the smell of the stuff they put on it, I'm sure. Because there was always somebody vomiting. You always watch out, somebody threw up.
That's not.
I mean,
I mean,
that was
even a
normal.
school that size, that isn't normal. I mean, once
I
every
thought
other
it was
day.
normal. I thought it was just part of going to public school. I
Yeah,
guess.
especially one that was as big as Wilkerson. You probably just they just thought that's you're normal, but it wasn't normal.
No, I guess, yeah, I guess it really, I mean, thinking back, yeah, why were so many kids throwing up all the time? That doesn't seem normal.
And then I brought up just some of these from your Facebook. It's like you wrote, she asked me to please not give up, and I think that was that Kathleen Goodwin? She's talking
Actually,
about
Kathleen
Susanna.
Goodwin posted it. That was Susanna.
Yeah, Susanna Bowles or Bolea,
Yeah,
Bolea.
yes. I
McCulloch
got to
class of
know
'88.
her when I started looking into all this. I got to know her through Facebook, and she was going through cancer treatments at the time. So,
Yeah, she had colon
yeah, this
cancer.
is when she was passing away, and she was in hospice care, and she would still we would still message each other through Facebook, and she would ask me to not give up. She wanted people to know.
And you're not, and we're not going to give
So
up.
that
I
was,
mean, this is devastating. I mean, listen to what she wrote you. Her goal was to make it through her daughter's birthday and Mother's Day, which she remarkably has. So that's good. She made it through there. But these are devastating. How do you? I mean, what do you?
yeah,
what do you do with that?
yeah.
It's gut wrenching.
There was actually a pretty emotional toll that all this kind of took on you, because I got to know a lot of them, and especially the one Kelly. I really got to admire her, and and then you lose them, and yeah, it's pretty rough after several of them. It starts to get hard.
And this one stuck out to me, and I know I did a lot about Cindy Hancock on the other video. And if you're watching this and haven't seen it, check out the other video. There's a little more background on it, but this one is where Cindy writes, "I hate taking my MS injections. Would think after 6 years of taking them, I would not have these horrible side effects. Don't want to take them anymore." And Chris Eisinger responds, "Switch to Copaxone. They now have it in 3 injections per week." So here's Chris, who attended Wilkerson, trying to give advice to Cindy. I mean, both went to Wilkerson, both got MS. So that just blows my mind. Here's Chris trying to help his friend who also got MS, most likely from going to Wilkerson. So that snapshot there just really got to me. And then there's another one from your site that's Talbert. Okay, there was another one about Cindy that you had on your Facebook, because I mean, Cindy was she was really loved. I mean, she had this. I didn't know her, but she had this massive group of friends and was highly thought of. And I think she just, if I think of one, I'm going to say it, victim from Wilkerson that really just always stands out. It's so just so tragic. The most tragic is going to be Cindy Hancock. I don't know why. It just does, because she just struggled so bad with that MS and
yeah, I know she
and
was
wrote
hit
about it a
hard
lot.
with a bunch of stuff.
Mm-hmm. And I know she moved out of the area. I think she moved to, I don't remember where, it was another state, maybe Indiana, somewhere like that. And I think she was there when she passed, but it just unbelievable how the health problems just ravaged such a well-liked person in the prime of her life. And it's something else I think of. I think you also said that it seems to affected females more than males.
Yes, they seem to have really come out with the raw end on all this as we aged. A lot more of them seem to, like the autoimmune disorders. Boy, it really seems to go through
the females,
women bad. A lot more so than the men. Although it kind of affected a bit of everybody.
Yeah, I don't know what the exact numbers would be, but it does. Just the ones that we talk about, I know Chris is one of the males, but it seems like they're disproportionately female. Um, Scott asked, and I don't know. This is something I want to look into. Scott asked, are there any similar cases anywhere else in the country? I think of the Aaron Brockovich case a little bit, and I know she's got a foundation for stuff like this about, because she got a movie made out of it. And I actually sent her the link to this video. Who knows if she'll actually see it, but
Oh,
hey, we're going to get it out
hey,
there. But I'm sure there's cases like this. They got to be, Scott, somewhere else that is, that it's an actual school and not like, a housing community like hers was, but an actual school. And somebody was trying to tell me about one. But that's something I'm going to dig into even more, because this case isn't going away for me. And I know it's not going away from Mark, because Mark has been somebody that is in the Facebook groups for like the McCullough, which was a high school. And it's like he said, you're just every day you find out about an old classmate that died in their 50s.
yeah, and then like I said, several of the ones that I lost, they did ask me, please don't give up on, they just want, I mean, they're already, some of them did say, my children, I don't have nothing to leave them. I've been sick my whole adult life. I mean,
Yeah.
or I've been fighting cancer for 8 years. My money's gone.
Yeah.
I have nothing to leave my kids.
Nothing to leave them. I mean, I wish there
And
was some financial settlement for the children or whatever. I mean, unfortunately, they're gone. I wish there was.
yeah,
They absolutely
it was
deserve
kind
it.
of important to them, but they were more than anything, they just wanted people to know why they're dying, why they died. I didn't just up and die. I mean, they were like, they just wanted their story to be heard, I think.
Yeah.
Because everybody always denied it from even back in the day. Don't talk about it, be quiet. Oh,
quiet.
y'all are just always sick. It
Yeah.
doesn't
It's
have
in your
nothing to do
mind.
with the school.
It's in your mind. It's not in their mind. It's not. It's not in your
Yeah,
mind.
I don't believe it is. I
This
think
is a
now people are like like I say here lately, that's more and more people adding up
There's more and
on,
more, and
more
we can't
passing
mention them
away
all.
on our alumni pages, and people are
Yep.
starting to go, man, we're too young to have this many people dying.
It's not normal. 58-year-old people, 57-year-old people should not be hearing about your classmates dying in those numbers. It's especially from medical diseases, not just some car crash or whatever. Everybody's going to have those, but with medical things like cancers and MS, and it's not. The common denominator is absolutely going to be Wilkerson.
Yeah,
It
because
wasn't
one of my
just
older sisters, she would when I first got involved in some of that, she was like, yeah, she was always kind of interested, but I think, people take it with a grain of salt and stuff. But then after a few years kept going by, and she's like, I think you might be onto something with that, because we're older than y'all. And I don't see this many people dying in my grades or anything in the older classes, but man, the younger classes are really losing a lot of people to and it's always cancers and stuff like that, not car accidents or,
Yeah.
She's like, we don't have that many. I mean, we've got a few but we're older.
Yeah.
And she's like,
we're older.
A few
You
years
expect
older.
it. Yeah.
And, but y'all just, man. And I said, yeah, especially the I guess around my little sister's age, the 89.
Yeah.
88, 89. I think they were hit hard.
Closer to mine. Yeah, that makes
They really, I mean, you look and they just all seem to have a lot of illness, a lot of cancers, a lot of deaths. But
yeah, all going through Wilkerson, all part of that number, that 4,500 number you're talking about. And then talk about the ones you know of, Chuck at 400, the ones that had no idea about it. I mean, the numbers are there. The numbers are there. This isn't like anyone's imagination or just a fluke. The numbers are there. It's Wilkerson. I personally think, speaking for myself, I think they covered it up. I think maybe the Woodlands had something to do with it. Or Mitchell Development back then, they didn't want any talk about it. I think CISD, I think Amos knew about it, and I think they wanted it to just go away. Just go away.
I agree. I think the whole thing was covered up, basically, kind of like you say, by all involved. The school didn't want it ever to be found out. They had too much to lose. Mitchell and the whole Woodlands government, whatever you want to call that, the whole ownership type thing, the lead people in the Woodlands, they wanted this silenced, I think, and to just get it to go away so we can forget about it and go back to our beautiful community.
And it worked, and it basically worked, but
I think
like
it did totally worked.
And it's sad and tragic, but this video is going to stay up as long as I have a channel, and I know you're going to be around on Facebook, so people can find you on Facebook. I'm sure some new people might come up and say, hey, I went to Wilkerson or whatever. You can contact me, or I can get in contact back with Mark, or you can find Mark on Facebook or me. My email is drewbeeson@yahoo, and I can get it to Mark. There's Michelle right now. I want to get this up because when I see somebody that was directly involved, I want them to be heard. Michelle says, if I'm getting this right, Bill Dramer, the builder of the school, my brother David Christner worked for him in Lexington, Texas. That's interesting because Michelle went to Wilkerson, and Michelle is mentioned in the original article. She said the issue and conversation came up about Wilkerson. See, we feel this at the end of the show, hearing from somebody like Michelle, which is great. I said the issue and the conversation came up about Wilkerson, said it was the reaction from the concrete to the carpet. We kind of talked about that yesterday, Mark. Then he refused to discuss any further about the issues. It's a cover-up. There you have it from somebody that suffered from this. There's a victim right there telling you. Wow. And we talked about that some. Like, I remember you said you thought there was some flooding at Wilkerson. So maybe that caused a reaction.
One time it seems like I remembered the cafeteria flooding. I don't know if anybody else remembers that. It wasn't real deep, a couple inches, but I do remember it flooding.
And that makes sense because in talking with Bill and about maybe they're using some of this water from the duck pond, but there's something that was, like Michelle used the word reaction from the concrete to the carpet, and you would think that some kind of moisture was added to trigger that reaction that she's talking about. That just something in there, like she's saying, makes sense.
Interesting. That is interesting.
I mean, that's amazing. Yeah, work for him in Lexington. I mean, so it's something between that, something between the concrete to the carpet. I mean, like at that surface level, brought that chemical up. And it's just hard to think that the chemical didn't come from all those trees that were treated with it. But, it's just something strange that happened. Just a fluke of these two things coming in contact with each other that caused it. That did not happen at Knox.
Yeah, did not happen at Knox.
Thank you for adding that. That's the reason.
As far as I know, no other school in the area. We went to Lamar before Wilkerson, which is right next door to those mills, almost sitting on top of them.
Right. They were all over there by Tamarack Park.
Problems that I remember.
Yeah. Or Knox didn't have any problems either. And I think Knox was built at the same time. And you could they're literally next door. You could just say Knox is next door to Wilkerson.
Yeah. And I don't remember
Lamar was across.
Complaining about being sick or anything. That was only Wilkerson.
Only Wilkerson.
I remember kids saying, even if you did start talking about the smell, they would say, that they had a lot of headaches. Because I didn't think there was much to it myself when I was young. I was just kind of like, those people are sick. But then the people I'm talking to would say, well, I don't know. I have a lot of headaches. And after several people started telling me that, I was like, oh, I guess it just doesn't bother me. But obviously it's bothering a lot of other people.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
my sister said maybe the adhesive too. Yeah, you were talking about
the other kids.
But yeah, between the adhesive
and there was some kids wouldn't want to talk about it either or admit that it made them sick because there was kind of a stigma that went with it.
Yeah, that's a good point too. I mean, it's always like towards the end, I'm trying that the greatest stuff comes out like that. Like you're talking about a stigma.
There was a stigma. It's like, oh, you're one of those.
Yeah,
sick kids.
It's like a flat earth. It's like the equivalent of a flat earther.
They would get teased and stuff. I remember it. They would get teased. Oh, the school makes you sick. Come on, give me a break. Nobody. No, it doesn't. I feel fine. Everybody.
Like you were tough.
Kids, I feel fine. Y'all are just always sick.
Like you were tough.
So they've never been believed. I understand why they want their story to be told.
Yeah, it's true. Like you didn't want to look at the wimpy kid that had to blame everything on that creepy smell. I mean, yeah, it had a stigma. Yeah, that is amazing. I mean, yeah, I think Michelle's right on it. That's an amazing piece of information right there.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah, because I was
So I
just
guess
thinking that
it's saying like something in the carpet reacted with something in the
some
concrete when they came
yes,
together. I
something with the
guess there was some
concrete
type of reaction.
reacted with something with the carpet, and you would think, yeah. Then he said he refused to discuss it any further. Of course, he refused to
Yeah,
discuss it
see,
any
I'm
further.
telling you, they still don't want
They
this
still
talked
don't
about
want it talked about.
at
Chuck told
all.
me too earlier today. Chuck told me that an attorney that he knew, that I also know who the guy is, which is another really crazy, could go really down the rabbit hole, unfortunately, but told Chuck, hey, back off. He told Chuck to back off of this because Chuck even said there was some homes around Wilkerson that they thought were affected. And when that came up, or the news thing like you were talking about was coming out, that this attorney that was friends with Chuck, basically went to school with him, said, that later became an attorney, said, hey, stop talking about it, dude. Like you're going up against the big boys. Quit talking. Like literally told Chuck Foreman that, like, quit talking about
Yeah,
Wilkerson.
I think there still are some powerful people that don't want this to be discussed. They want the whole thing to be forgotten.
Yeah, just literally swept under the carpet, no pun intended. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
we've always kind of said that.
yeah, but going back to another question is, like I think Scott asked earlier, has this happened before? Like, so that's one thing I'm going to look into is, was there everything that could have created between, like what Michelle's talking about, between, this reaction between the carpet and the concrete and what was used? I think that would go a long way to, at least so we know what happened. But we do know, we know it's got, I'd be stunned if it wasn't the phenol.
Yeah.
I'm gonna find some to smell it, because that's, like I said, I'll never forget that smell as long as I live. It was that bad, being secondhand to it. But I'm glad that came out, and I'm glad that you're still on this and a place to go to. Chuck did a lot of good work. I told him, Chuck felt bad. Chuck really felt bad that he couldn't do any more for them, from the people he has spoken to. Cindy, he was a good friend of Cindy's as well. And he just feels terrible.
Yeah,
He
he
couldn't.
did kind of come forward and tell people that he felt he had taken it as far as he could,
Yeah, and
and
he
he was
did.
hoping somebody else could come and take it from there. He's like, I got this started, but I've got other things. He had other
Yeah.
work he was
Yeah, he had a
doing
lot
and
on his
stuff.
plate,
So
and I told him, you did as much as you could. You did all you could, Chuck, and he did. And a big shout out to Chuck Foreman for getting that article done, and to I think it was Kimberly Sutton that wrote the article for the Conroe
yeah,
Courier.
and she's where I got most all my documentation. All the stuff from the state was from her.
Yeah, so big kudos to her for writing that article and providing you with the documents, and getting all that out, and of course, thanks to you for being a clearinghouse for so many of these people that suffered, and just wanting some information, and in its own way, it makes them feel better to at least know that people are talking about this, that their memories are not forgotten. Uh, from the people that have died, the people that are still suffering from it, that it hasn't gone away, and that we're still thinking about Wilkerson. I think I can't remember how you put it in something you wrote on Facebook, how it kind of goes back, life goes on, but then Wilkerson's always
Oh,
hiding back there. You know what I mean?
yeah, you get busy with life, and things move forward, and you kind of put it to the back of your mind, and then later you see something and or smells,
Yeah, you already smell something.
something brings it back to the front of your mind.
Yeah.
But,
It's one of those things. But Mark, thanks for coming on, and we'll probably do it again sometime as new information comes out. I'm going to stay on it. I know you will.
sure,
Chuck
yeah,
hears
I'll reach
anything, I
out
stay in
if
touch
I
with
hear
Chuck.
more. So it could
Yeah.
always use attention. So
Yeah, and share this if everybody's watching. When you watch this in the future, because this is recorded and this will be on YouTube for as long as I have a channel. So I didn't even want to put music to this. I actually wanted to play one of from one of Danny Blitz's songs, and I did put a link to a bunch of Danny songs, and they're great. I mean, I'm like, I feel terrible that I stiffed Danny $15 way back in 1982. I mean,
He
I do. I feel
was
terrible.
very talented, I gotta say.
Oh my gosh, he's talented. I listened to it. I listened to some of those songs, and one of them I even read here's some of the lyrics. It's called "This Is Nowhere," and I just thought of growing up in the Woodlands where it wasn't that populated. It was outside of Houston. But here's some of the lyrics. I just want to read it by Danny Blitiz. It says, "Now I recall staring at the cracks in the wall. I saw the Stein staring at the cracks in my mind all around this town. Standing up, turned it upside down, howling at the moon. Time keeps passing by. I can't identify why we don't ask why. We all know that this is nowhere, but still we stay. We all know that this is nowhere, still we stay. What does that say?" It just felt so like it just fit with the whole Wilkerson thing in just bizarre way. And it's a great song, by the way. And if you listen, if anybody wants to listen to it, the link is in the description of this video. It's the first track from that album by Danny Blitz, formerly Danny Philpot. Great guy, which is just so weird that you mentioned a guy that I was thinking about. He happens to be connected to the Wilkerson thing. But I don't know, those lyrics just really stuck out to me for just that time period and what everything going on. I just thought it was a really good fit. But yeah, Danny, rest in peace, very well liked. All the victims, the people, Michelle, that are still suffering and lost her sister early on, just so many tragedies. It's hard to deal with.
Yeah.
All the people you communicated with, it's about them. We can't, like I said, we can't mention everybody because we know we're talking about at least 400 people plus.
There's a lot.
But this is for them. It's for all the victims, the people that have passed on, and for the truth to get out.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it, Drew.
Yeah, appreciate you having it on, Mark, and we'll do it again. As more things develop in the future.
Sounds great.
All right. Thanks for coming on. Thanks everybody in the live chat.